Welcome to the Work the System podcast, where we help entrepreneurs make more and work less using systems. And I'm your host, Josh Fonger. And today we have a special guest. We have Brandon Vaughn. Brandon scaled a very small service company with 0 employees to over 60, and went from $8K a month to almost $50,000 a month in less than 6 seasons in his business. He is passionate about helping small business owners create a company culture where their teams can thrive. In 2017, he was awarded the SBA Small Business Person of the Year for the state of Oregon, and now helps small business owners systemize their companies. All right, Brandon, so give us the backstory. How did you get into your line of work, and where you are today?
Oh man. Well, actually I started out as I guess you could call me a second generation entrepreneur. My dad, he owned a window cleaning company. Started it in 1978. He was the owner operator, guy with the squeegee in his hand, and all of our customers loved him. He was like the man. And homeschooled through high school. Started working full time with him at age 14. So literally 40 hours a week washing windows with my dad, which when you're a teenager is a really interesting experience, but that's a different story. He was, basically owner operator for 33 years up until about 2011. When he was diagnosed with heart disease. So pretty much got to a point to where the doctor told him flat out, you can't work physically at all anymore. And at that point, the business was faced being shut down. So 2012, I bought the business from him, and, no employees, just that 8K a month range. And then over the next years, we scaled it up to, to where we were doing almost, $500,000 a month.
Wow, that's an amazing transformation. And I mean, obviously your dad had the health issue, but what clicked for you to be able to go to where it was to, where it is now?
Systems, work in the system. Little plug for you there. Yeah, it was, it just, really, I didn't know what I didn't know. And the first instance of me understanding how important it was to have systems in my business was when I realized how much information was still locked up into my dad's brain as the owner. So, we go up to a customer's house and they would be like, no, did you do it this way? Cause it was supposed to be done this way. Your dad always did it this way. And, he always called ahead 3 days in advance. And then we have to make sure that the cat door is locked in the back when you leave. Like, you can't do this. You have to do this. So we ended up finding all these things that my dad did just inherently naturally. And, so our first system that we kind of created was working on extracting all that critical information up in my dad's head and, getting it into some kind of a process, some kind of a document and thing. So that really is what kind of led me down this systems journey, was that.
So how did that, I'm curious, so how did you actually get it out? I mean, did you just interview him, or did you just have him come with you and you just write down everything he did? How did that actually happen?
We did. Yeah. We interviewed him in depth. So we printed off a list of first, he worked off of a paper calendar and, paper contacts. And I remember the first time us trying to digitize things, we went out and bought one of those little digital Rolodexes that you get at Walmart, little ones with the keyboard on it. You type things in. So we spent about 3 weeks typing in all of these clients, each one by one. And then at the end of 3 weeks, we realized that you can't export it out of this little thing. It just had a little flash memory on there with no port. So it was a huge learning curve because there were so many systems I didn't know. But slowly but surely we started, documenting things. And then of course, as we started scaling, a lot of systems started going into place. And actually, getting a business coach and a mentor to kind of help me through that whole process helped a ton.
Okay. So there were some things, some gaps that maybe your dad didn't know about that you had to seek other way. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So when you bring on your first employees, because I mean, as you know, our audience is all trying to do what you did, right? They're trying to take their enterprise where they have it all in their head. How do they go to that next level, get over that paradigm shift? So a big part of that was you had to do some hiring. So how did you actually bring on your first people, and how did they do?
Well, when we first started growing, hired my first few employees. It was mostly friends and family, friends of family and family of friends and just kind of utilize as much of our inner circle as possible. However, like 2014 ish, somewhere, 2 to 3 years in, we were kind of growing. Something happened when we were in the middle of our busy season. So we're booked out solid for 2 months straight. And within about 3 weeks of each other, over half of my team members quit while we were booked out solid. And this is when I had my first panic attack, literally just curled up on the couch in the fetal position, telling my wife, employees suck, I quit. I just really wanted to be done with employees. And, I don't know if you've read the E-Myth, but I'm sure you have, being a systems guy. But that was like from me going, okay, I want to go back to the infancy stage of business when it was just simple and it was just me. My dad had it right the whole time, just, be your own owner operator. But that event led me down a journey on really working on company culture and figuring out how to attract people and how to, invest into them first and actually care about, their hopes and dreams and goals first before expecting them to care about your business's hopes and dreams and goals. So it was a pretty pivotal moment for me to kind of, explore that a little bit more in some of those systems.
Wow, that's a great great story, and I think hopefully everyone listening will learn from your your
Yeah,
panic
don't have a
attack.
panic attack. They're not fun.
So I guess so the employees, of course, they work for the money, but then at a certain point they're just like, well, this is hard. I don't like this, and they knew you didn't really have a future for them planned out that was exciting, so they weren't really that vested. So what did you do in the culture? Because this is a service-based industry, they're cleaning windows. I mean, I started a business cleaning windows. We talked about that.
Right.
I was in, between freshman and sophomore year in college. And so it's a good business to make some cash for a while, but how do you get people to actually, to stick in that kind of culture?
It's one of those things where we had to recognize that it's an entry-level position. We had to embrace that. The days of when people used to work at the same job for 30, 40 years and wear it as like a badge of honor, like those days are gone. The new generation of workers and employees, they're looking for impact. They're looking for appreciation, in recognition. They want to be able to, see progress happening, and they're used to things happening quickly. So when things don't happen quickly, they get very impatient and they want to, do something else. So honestly, kind of my first foray into coaching began internally with my own employees. So one of the things that we did is whenever I interviewed anybody, I didn't matter who it was, I would say, okay, there's two kinds of people that come and work for this company. The first person understands that this is an entry-level job and they perhaps have bigger dreams and aspirations of things that they want to do, maybe their dream job or something over here. We want that person to feel like during their time here at All Clean, it was the best job they ever had, their absolute best job. And that when they were here, they learned skills and traits and developed professionally to be able to get them that next dream job. So we gave people a membership to lynda.com, free membership to lynda.com. If they said they wanted to be a graphic designer, we would say, okay, let's get you set up on these courses, and here's these free courses here, and here's how to win friends and influence people if you want to be a manager, and here's, read this and come back to us with a report. And we had a whole business library full of books and personal development books that we actually had in each one of our locations to get people to always be thinking about improving themselves. During our team meetings, we talked about, Financial Peace University and how to have, the Dave Ramsey cash method and help set family budgets and improve their credit scores. And then if they said that they wanted to go to Uganda for 3 months on a mission trip, we said, okay, let's figure out how much we need to save each month and set aside, and let's, plan this together so that you can get that dream vacation, that dream trip that you've always wanted to go on to. So that's really how we kind of developed, those people. And the second group of people, we said, maybe you want to stay here and move into a sales position or a management position. And if that's the case, let's talk about what that path looks like. So focusing on them first, develop this really, loyal culture inside of our company to where they also cared about the success of the company.
Okay, that's really That's really neat. So you divide it into two classes. You either have the class that actually wanted to grow within the business. They saw the vision because your vision was not stay local and small, but it's expanded,
Yes.
right? You have some other locations now. Or people who just said, hey, this is between high school and college or somewhere in that phase, and I'm okay doing this for a year or two, but I'm not really interested in doing it long term. Okay, two different tracks.
Yeah. And if they got their next dream job and gave their 2 weeks notice, rather than punishing them, we celebrated it. We talked about how awesome it was. We had a going away party for them and, celebrated their success with that because I think too many employers, they almost feel insulted when someone's, going to quit and when someone's going to move on to an opportunity. But if it's truly, an amazing opportunity for them, why wouldn't you celebrate that? And I think our employees, got to a point where our team members, they knew that and they felt that.
So I know what some owners are thinking right now, the owners who are especially cash strapped right now and time strapped, and they're thinking, well, how am I going to have time to, give them lynda.com and give them other things and celebrate them and coach them and the money to do that. How did you get past feelings like that? Or how did you make the time and the money for those things?
Well, the first thing that I did is I sat down and I did a cost analysis on how much it costs for me to turn over an employee. So when I lost an employee, and there's lots of studies that have been done on this where it can be, 6 months of an employee's salary or all the way up to a year's worth. But for our company, we determined that for every employee that turned over in the business, it was about $6,000. For our technicians. Our managers is substantially higher. But when you have to retrain, you have damages when you have new employees that don't understand what this is, you really start realizing that investing in these things here that keep them engaged and appreciated and, you invest back into them, they stay. And our number one lead source for new employees was actually referrals from our employees. So one of the things that we did is we actually had an employee referral incentive program to where if an employee referred another, team member into our company and they stayed with us for at least 6 months, they would get a cash bonus for referring them. So the amazing thing happened. They would start telling employees, hey, you got to come, work for this company. It's the best company I've ever worked for. It's an amazing culture. But hey, if you aren't coming and sticking around, don't bother applying. Like, you got to stay here. So they started like pre-vetting our, future employees, making sure that they were going to stick around for the long haul. And so that was a pretty cool side benefit of offering that incentive program.
I love that idea. And that's, it's equipping your team to do the work for you in
Right.
a way that's a win-win. And whenever you can set up win-win systems like that, just simple ones, that's very cool. And I've also tell people that this is the perfect example for those people I'm coaching, where I say, if people are coming and going in your business, maybe your business is not a great place to work. And, and it's not the employee's fault, but it's what the system you built. That's the thing. So how did you, it sounds like you're a big part of making that culture happen. How did you keep that culture in place as the company grew and as you've spent less and less time in the business day to day?
It all kind of fell upon leadership. At the beginning when we were kind of growing and trying to put leadership in place, I learned lessons along the way of being a little bit too close to some of my employees, almost kind of more like a friend than really, a true leader or a boss. I hate the word boss, but when you start calling your employees, hey bro, how's it going? And things, and you probably have lost that balance of, employer-employee relationship. So understanding how to build up leaders in your company is so critical for growth. And oftentimes what I see people do is if they're going to, for instance, they need an operations manager to manage all the, the technicians and the employees. One of the common mistakes I see is that they'll take the best producer. Well, this guy does really great production, so therefore I'm going to make him the manager, or he's been with me the longest, therefore I'm going to make him the manager. Whereas what they don't look at is, has this person been able to recreate himself? Have they been able to put someone equally as good as they are, and create them from scratch and actually train and get them up to that level? Or do they only know how to just be, good just themselves? So, making sure that you have a really good management team in place that has a servant leadership mentality, because people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. And if you put a bad boss in place as a middle manager or, some kind of a, leadership position, people will leave and they will be disengaged.
So, and I don't know how detailed you can get into this, but you can answer on the question if you want to. But if you're, you've grown this, and now you're starting to. I think you said you sold your business, but you still work in the business, and now you have different locations. So, how did you get it ready for that? Did you have to put certain things in place? Because I know a lot of people listening eventually want to do what you did. They want to sell their company. So, how did you do that?
It's funny because a few years ago, when we were in the middle of growing, we were growing almost double every single year over year. And there was some times when it was really tough. The business was really hard. And most of the times when business is really, really hard, it's because you're missing certain systems inside of your company that help with scaling it up. And you will typically find where all your pain point is, usually is the exact Achilles heel in your company, where you need to focus and like build some more systems and processes and things and training programs and things to get that to improve. But during that time period, I made a promise to my wife that within the next 5 years, we would grow the business and we would sell it. And, a few years later, literally 3 years later from doing that, we had an offer on the table that was a fantastic offer. And the timing of it just sounded right. And during the process of me working on selling it, getting it ready to sell, it's kind of like when you're getting ready to sell your house. You put on the fresh coat of paint, you replace those little rotten boards on the side of the house. You finally fix that hinge on like the cupboard that's always been squeaking forever. And when it kind of got to the point to where a business was ready to sell, it was running very, very smoothly. And I was able to step out of it. In fact, the last several months before I exited out of the company, we would have our directors meetings with my, director of operations, admin, and sales. And then I was called the Invisible Man. So I would literally be on our calls and they all named themselves different superheroes. They were my Justice League. That's another thing. But I was the Invisible Man. So I was not that involved in the business at the time that I sold, which really is what an owner or a potential buyer is going to want to look for. They want to see a business that runs without the owner because they don't want to buy a job. They want to buy a business. And so it was a pretty amazing process to kind of go through that all the way to the point where I was able to exit last year.
So now part of the exit, are you still on as a advisor to the business, or how does that work?
No, not on as an advisor to the business. The two entrepreneurs that bought it are just absolutely rock stars, and they've been expanding, the company All Clean Soft Wash out nationally. Mm-hmm. When I left, there was, 2 locations that, we were primarily responsible for. And then they had multiple locations kind of around the country. And now that's become All Clean Soft Wash. And they have like nine locations and growing. So it's pretty cool to see the business kind of continue to grow and that legacy to kind of still live on.
That's awesome. That's very awesome. Well, congratulations on that. Well, let's get to the, your life now, because you've kind of, you've learned all these things, and now you're a coach, you're a consultant, not just to your staff, but to other business owners. How, what do you do? Like, what is your process now when an owner comes to you and has issues? Like, what process do you take them through?
The initial process is finding out what is the number one focus area they need to work on right now. Because I think the most difficult things for business owners is there's so many things that you can work on and focus on at one time. A lot of business owners confuse busy work with making progress. They're like, I don't understand. I'm working 50, 60 hours a week and I just don't feel like I'm growing. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. It's usually because they're not getting out of their own way and they're not saying, this stuff's not important. I can delegate these tasks. I need to focus on this one thing here. So usually one of the first things that we do is we actually have something that's called the business snapshot report, which if anyone wants that, we have a download link on the website that I'll give at the end, to where they can go and they can download it and kind of, start working through some of that process. But it identifies what is your number one department that you need to work on, and what you don't track and measure, you can't improve. So we actually have people score themselves in each one of these categories in each one of their departments that kind of identifies where the weak spot is. And then we hone in and say, okay, this week, your accountability is you're going to get this number from a 1 up to a 10. And here's exactly how we're going to do that. Here's business systems and resources and templates that you can implement, you can put in place, and then you can just start improving those. So it's very tailored and very structured towards exactly what the business needs are and getting them up to that, scoring 10 in all their categories.
Uh-huh. Very cool. I'm gonna check out that snapshot right after this call here. So so you work with service-based businesses mainly based on your background here. So that they take the snapshot report, they say, gosh, I'm at a 2 with my employee culture and a 1 with this, and maybe they have like 10 different things that are all 1s and 2s instead of 10s. How do you pick the one that really is the problem area?
Typically it's just picking the one that, the coach can tell will make the quickest impact on their business. Cause some things you can't take from a 1 to a 10 in 1 week's time, like company culture. You can get started. You start having weekly team meetings, start putting, employee review processes in place, having offer letters and job descriptions, and, training programs and checklists for them. The top 12 happiest employees in the workplace say that their boss set really clear roles and expectations for themselves. So oftentimes just even small things like that of just getting down on paper, hey, here's what I would expect of you. Here's the metrics that we're going to measure you on a regular basis. And we're going to get together every month, every quarter, every 6 months to be able to check your progress. And again, what you measure and track, you can improve. So just small little tweaks can make a massive impact on culture, but it usually just starts with this week, we're going to work on this and nothing else until this is done.
So with the measurements, are there certain measurements that you always are your go-to measurements that you think all small businesses really need to put in place?
All small businesses? We focus very specifically on just service-based businesses. So as far as like universal ones, I don't want to just say, well, profit margins and things like that, because everyone knows those types of things. But in our industry specifically, one of the key metrics that we focus a lot on is something that's called capacity, which is a fantastic metric for figuring out if you have a sales goal this month of $100,000, and so far you have about $50,000 booked and sold, for the entire rest of the month. How much more can you actually fit in? Can you actually fit in 50,000? Because when the time moves by, there comes a point to where now there's no way you can hit that goal unless you add on a whole bunch of trucks, sell a whole bunch more. Even if you sell it, you still can't actually do the work. So that capacity metric is actually, one that with all of our Conquer clients, our coach will get together with them every single week and say, okay, what's your capacity at? What's your booked? What's your goal? And track that progress. And it's been very eye-opening for service business owners to understand, at what point they need to focus the teeter-totter on increasing production or increasing sales. So capacity metric is one that we, in our industry, take a look at weekly, all the time. Interesting.
So you figure out the biggest problem, they start to work on that. And then what's more of the long-term approach that you take with your clients after that?
The big long-term approach that we take is really starting to focus on mindset and leadership development. One of the things that I like to talk to people about is the 7 stages of belief, because rather than the 5 stages of grief, there's 7 stages of belief to where it goes all the way from really having no clue what you don't know, and all your goals being so tiny and so small because you just don't believe that anything bigger than that is possible, all the way up until, you're in the acceptance stage and the execution stage where you're actually executing on these large goals. So we try to really bridge that mindset gap because typically the 6 inches between the ears are where most business owners end up failing to realize their business goals and failing to realize that their business is not a tool for their life. They're just like a tool for their business, and they're just, working and grinding and not really making any progress. And most of the time when that's the case, it has to do with, someone that's lacking in execution. And that has to do with a, discipline and mindset, type of behavior.
So now that you mentioned it, what are the 7 real quick? What are those 7 stages of belief? Maybe you don't have memorized.
the seven stages of belief. Let me go ahead and pull them up and take a look at them. Cause I do have them memorized kind of, but not quite really. So the first one's fear.
Okay.
Everyone starts out in fear of growth, fear of risks, fear of the unknown, fear of failure. Then the next stage is justification,
Okay.
which is, well, you know what, just getting bigger means more problems, or, getting there is not worth it. What I'm doing is good enough. No one can do as good a job as me, so I need to be the guy that's out in the field. The next stage 3, is the breakthrough stage, where you finally have that aha moment. You see or you hear about someone who is actually doing the thing that you thought was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this breakthrough moment. Then the next stage after that comes denial, where you're like, no, that'd never work here. It's a wrong market. No, you don't understand. I can't find anyone good to work for me in my market, the government, whatever. There's always that denial phase that comes in. And then after that is depression, where you realize that you are, you feel like a failure for not getting that thing that you now see as possible. Then comes acceptance afterwards, where you finally accept the fact that you're the bottleneck. It is your mindset, and that you need to accept guidance from people that have actually done it and accept that guidance. And then the last stage is, actually executing, because believing and executing are two very different things. And I tell a lot of we have a little mantra that we say in our inner circle, our mastermind group, that's don't lie. And the lie stands for lack in execution. So don't lack in execution. And if you are lacking in execution, you're literally lying to yourself. If you say you're going to do something and that, this vision is going to become a reality and you don't, you're just lying. So we tell people, don't lie. You got to get this done. And we put a lot of really ridiculous accountabilities in place to make sure that if people, when I say ridiculous, if you don't get this done you get this system implemented into your team by next week and come back to us with a report showing that it's been executed on, you're going to have to get on a Facebook Live in the Conquer group and, go live and sing I'm a Little Teapot, Short and Stout. And, if Wednesday is the deadline, Tuesday evening, they're typically like finalizing it, making sure that they're not going to have to do that the next day. So it's that's mainly what the big role that the coaches play, is holding people accountable to actually getting things done.
Yeah. Well, you guys make it fun too. I love that. And, great. Anyone who is listening, hopefully you had a chance to write down those 7 stages, and maybe that you found yourself in one of those stages at some time or another. So what's the quickest way to go from fear to execution? Can that be done in just a minute's time? Can you snap your fingers and get there, or does it take some time to actually get that?
Well, for me, it took quite a period of time. Honestly, I didn't actually start really improving until I had that breakthrough moment and that acceptance, phase. I think the longest part is just the difference between the acceptance into execution, because you can go from being totally mortified to accepting the fact that, I'm the bottleneck. This is where I need to start taking action. But that biggest gap is between acceptance and execution. So, for me, having a business coach for the last 5 years, made a massive impact on me. There's no way I would have been able to overcome my self-limiting beliefs without being able to see that not only was it possible, but here's the very clear path on how to overcome it. And when I'm like terrified, standing at the edge, saying, I don't want to jump. And they're like, no, it's fine. You can jump. You just build the plane on the way down. It's totally fine. You can totally do it. It wasn't until I had those coaches that were pushing me to actually execute, and then, starting to see results, that I started getting more confidence that helped me execute more often. And even when it felt like it was super risky, still executing.
And I suppose when you're actually in the middle of executing, you personally think that the risks are really huge, but what's the worst that could happen?
That's right.
It's like,
it's true. Yeah, it's true.
Especially when you implement a new system like you're talking about, the worst that could happen is you have to tweak it the next week to make it better.
Exactly.
The risks are so small, but they seem big in your mind. Well, that's very
cool. My business partner, Josh, he's always saying, take massive imperfect action. Just it's going to be imperfect. I think sometimes, everyone sees the wine, but no one sees the crushing of the grapes, is also another one of his famous Josh-isms. But basically, what you see on the highlight reel on Facebook and social media of other people's businesses can make you feel like a failure. But I promise you that nobody has a fully systemized, completely turnkey, zero improvements need to be made ever again business. Nobody has that. Everyone is always tweaking and working on it. And when you're at $100,000 a year or you're at $100 million a year, you're always tweaking and working on things, because with each new stage of business comes adjustments to systems and new systems, and then technology changes and you got to go in and you got to tweak things anyways. So the sooner you get used to just going in and making changes and implementing things, the faster you can keep up with the pace.
Yep. Well, Brandon, this has been very helpful to me and hopefully everyone listening, because it's an inspiration to know that you can face those fears. You can do it in a fun way and enjoy the challenge. And it's also helpful for people who have accepted that it is a responsibility. Like a lot of people who are on this or watching this have gotten to that point, I think, but understand that that's the place, acceptance to execution. Maybe you need help, maybe you need support, but get that, because if you're not executing, you're not really getting anywhere. You're just kind of wallowing in that,
that
phase right there. Well, good. Well, again, Brandon, thanks again for being on the show. And thank you all for joining us on the Work System Podcast. If you want a copy of the book, Work the System, which is right behind me here, make sure to give us a review, put it on either Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you are watching this, and then email it to us. And then before I go, Brandon, I forgot to ask, where can people find you, find out more about what you do and your new coaching program?
Yeah, well, if you want that small business snapshot report, you want to download that. If you head over to agsconquer.com /work the system. How about that, huh, Josh? agsconquer.com/work the system. Anyone who's listening to this podcast, we'll give you guys the free business snapshot report. No strings attached, no anything along those lines. And if you want to learn more about the Conquer program, there's a really cheesy video of me talking about the Conquer program. But if you can make it through the video and watch it, all the details are in there on how you could apply to join our mastermind group. It's just for service business owners, though. It's just for home services business owners.
Perfect. Well, very good. Well, Brandon, thanks for putting that plug in there. Everyone check out the snapshot. I will too. And I'll check out next week. We'll do another podcast, hopefully live on Facebook again. And we'll see you all next week. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Thanks, Brandon.
See ya.